Hi, and welcome to Divorce Hacker. I'm your host, Ann Grant. On this show, we'll have a variety of guests who've been through divorce and are experts on the topic. Whether you're thinking about a divorce, in the midst of it, or already divorced, we are here to share our stories with you in the hope that you may relate, learn, process, and overcome whatever you're experiencing in your life. I am so excited to have my dear friend, Shelley Williams, on my show today. Shelley is a health and wellness expert specializing in yoga, Pilates, breathwork, meditation, and nutrition. Shelley is the creator of Yoga Mitra, which offers annual mentorship and certification in both yoga and Pilates. Shelley curates and guides international retreats, and I have been lucky enough to go with her twice to Costa Rica to the jungle, which was an epic experience. She offers unique cultural and nature-filled experiences for personal growth. And so, Shelley, I'm so happy to have you here today and talk with you about something that we both survived, which is divorce. And you really helped me through the yoga practice that you've worked on with me, which we'll talk about in a moment, is so much more than just stretching and holding poses. But you've really helped me to quell my anxiety, be present, and do things that I've been fearful of doing. And so I'm excited to have you on today so that you can talk to us more about the work that you're doing with Freedom Tribe, which I know is a new venture you're creating to facilitate helping women go through divorce, and even walk us through some practices that we can all use to help us in our daily lives.
Great. I'm honored to be here, and I'm happy to support in any way that I can. So thank you for having me.
So first I want to ask you something. The first time I ever went to yoga, I was going through my divorce and I knew I needed something to calm my nerves. And I had grown up as a dancer doing ballet and tap and jazz. So I had this idea in my head that yoga would come naturally for me. And I went down and took a class at what is Yoga Loft at 6:30 at night. This is years and years ago, with a man who, it was an advanced class. People were standing on their heads. They were doing all kinds of crazy arm balances. And I was completely freaked out because it was not at all
common.
Yeah, and then I didn't do it again for probably 5 more years when I took it up with my daughter. And then together we began practicing, and that's how I found you. So talk to us about yoga, which I know is so much more now than just stretching and holding poses.
Yeah, and well, that's we often have these conceptions about things that maybe we've been exposed to or heard about, but not had direct experience with. And so the physical postures of yoga, we call them the asanas, that's typically a doorway in for a lot of folks, particularly in the West, right? And there's many different schools and branches, actually 6 different schools of yoga and different approaches of what the practice of yoga is. And in our teacher training school, what we talk about a lot is just that question, what is yoga and how do we teach it or guide a student, guide ourselves into the process of self-inquiry. And so it really is a science and technology of the mind, of how to work with the many layers that make us who we are. It's not just our physical body that we're cruising around in. We have emotional, energetic body, spiritual body, mental body, which has many layers within it as well, are layers of our awareness. And so the goal of yoga, the word itself means to connect or to join together. And then the next question would be to join together what? All the layers of who you are, for absolute presence and clarity. And when we kind of dig into that definition a little bit further, the practice of yoga is about calming the fluctuations of the mind, or the crazy, the wave, the storm of the mind, which often comes from external input and situations and challenges and emotions and feelings. And so our body is a great doorway in, because when we're in a physical experience of something, it grabs our attention. And what's really interesting about yoga, about the practice of yoga, or any kind of mindful movement practice that involves breath and focused attention, is that the primary benefit, the first benefit that you receive, is not necessarily, oh, my hamstrings are more flexible and my glutes are tighter.
Right.
Which we all love that. But the primary benefit is on the quality and clarity of your mind. It grounds you, and it helps you think a little more clearly, see situations with a little more intelligence, compassion, clearness. And so you're able, I try not to make any big decisions or send any, text messages or phone calls or emails until I've had my daily movement practice, because it just sets me up for a clearer approach on how I'm seeing things. So it really, when we say yoga is a science of the mind, in the outermost layer level is that it calms and clears your mind. And you get to have a flexible, strong body, which is important and wonderful for all of our vital processes, for our sleep, our, digestion, how we experience life. So all these things pull together to create a better you, a better me. And so we can have a better experience together. So once I kind of experienced that, because that was kind of, you probably felt that too, like, oh, I feel different after this. I don't know what it is, but I feel different. Life feels a little different. That's what usually keeps us coming back.
It's so true. I found that in my law practice, the people I work closely with, they can tell when I've practiced, when I've done yoga before I come into the office. Mm-hmm. And I just recently did what you suggested, which is decided that I wouldn't read any email or fire off any email until after my morning meditation and yoga practice, because it does have an amazing ability, more than anything else I've ever tried. I used to be a runner. I did, went through the phase of doing all the aerobic stuff back in the 80s.
I taught step aerobics in the 90s. Early 90s.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But there's nothing like the yoga practice, in my personal experience, to really help ground us. And like you said, allow us to be present. So in my own personal experience and in the women that I work with, what I experienced when I realized that I needed to get divorced was just this feeling of overwhelm. I wasn't a family law lawyer at the time. I was an attorney, but nevertheless, I felt like I did not know where to start. Should I sell the house? Should I go play with my young children? I wasn't working at the time. I had stopped working for a period of time. Should I go right out and get a job? Should I start packing up my house to sell it? And I remember standing in my garage in my nightgown one morning at around 10 in the morning, talking to my dad on the phone, just saying, I don't even know where to begin, which led me on my journey. Once I kind of figured it out for myself and started helping other women, then I wrote my book, specifically with the goal of trying to break things down so it wouldn't be so overwhelming. But my experience with yoga is that it really can help me and my clients who practice it calm down enough so they can sit in a room with me and we can strategize about what they need to do for them and their kids to move forward.
Yeah, absolutely.
And one of the things I know you and I have talked about that we've both observed is, and you may have experienced this, I certainly did, and many of my clients do, if not all of them, is a divorce is a loss that is like the grieving process.
Absolutely.
And so in order to be healthy, you need to move through those 4 stages of grieving, which are denial, anger, bargaining, oh, he's not so bad, I'll take him back, and acceptance. And we've talked a lot, and I know together have worked with women who get stuck in that denial phase.
Yeah.
And getting stuck in any of those places, just being angry forever, being an angry, bitter woman, that's not good either. So how can yoga, the practice, be helpful to facilitate moving through this process in a more present, healthy way?
I love the way that you share the stages of grief, because that, of course, is, we all can feel that when you're going through this process of divorce, that it completely disrupts. We have these organizational systems of energy that we study in yoga philosophy and in traditional Chinese medicine and Ayurveda that are called the chakras. And there's many different chakra systems. Probably one of the most classic one is the 7 chakras. And this is usually the part where some people start to check out because they're like, oh, you're getting a little woo-woo on me. But I'd love for you to envision it like an electrical panel board. And when you go out to the side of your house and there's been a circuit that's blown, you go out there and you look, and each circuit has a specific area of the house that it powers. And so we can all agree that we're beings of energy. We have a beating heart in our body, and there's energy that powers that. That's a little bit mystical to figure out where it comes from, but there's energy that powers the beating heart in our body. And that the energy that flows through our body has an organizational system, just like the fuse box on our house. When you go through a divorce, the root chakra switch houses is the foundation. It's like somebody just went and set the whole fuse box on fire and the house on fire. And you're trying to figure out what to do. Which circuit break, what do I fix? What do I handle first, right? So that is foundational in the chakra system. Our root chakra is all about survival. It's about our health, our well-being, our home, where we live, our finance, our family. These are all foundational to our survival. So that's one of the reasons why we feel, as men and women in this process, so disturbed, right? And so again, the practice of a movement practice to calm your energy through the physical body, through moving your body in an intentional way with breath, with meditation, can at least put water on the fire and get you to a place where, okay, the alarm bells are off. There's still the rubble that needs to be dealt with, but at least now I can try to step to this situation and start to handle it. So that basic commitment, I tell this to a lot of my clients and friends that have dealt with any kind of challenge in their life, but particularly with divorce, is commit to some sort of daily practice. You can call it whatever you want, but that has breath and intention and focus behind it. Not you distracted with earphones and a book and the news on a bike, but a focused, powerful practice where you can ground and center yourself. One of the things that I think we can agree on that we see and felt going through divorce is that it's very exhausting. Mm-hmm. It's just emotionally and physically exhausting. So there's this depletion that happens. And so when we engage with the practice of yoga, not only does it ground and calm us and give us that mental clarity, it also raises our energy. It's a resource to raise our energy. So then we actually, I remember days where I just, if I let my practice go for a week or two because I was so overwhelmed and I didn't want to get out of bed.
Right.
And it was like, you know what? I know I need at least to get to my yoga mat. And then once I made that step, then it was like, okay, now I can look at this agreement or, figure out what's happening with our parenting plan and all the emotions behind that. So just that commitment to ground and then raise your energy is key to deal with the stages of grief, to deal with the stages of divorce. You mentioned denial, right? And that's a big one that comes with clarity. And we feel in our gut and in our heart, and we see with our eyes, but we see and sense with, all the 5 senses that we have. And so oftentimes, one of my key learning points from going through divorce is remove distraction. Remove all distractions that you might be pulling in for yourself, whether it be in the form of, self-medicating or extraneous relationships or things that are going on that might distract your vision, right? And trust your gut, trust your instinct. That is also a location of one of our other chakras that we can feel and interpret what's going on, even if we choose not to see it. Like the body doesn't lie. And so that ability to really connect in with your gut instinct of what you sense is going on, and then having the self-respect and grace to respond to that can help with that process of denial. As far as anger, it's also a common response, right? We tend to feel anger in right above in our solar plexus, third chakra, which is the center for wanting to take action. And that's usually when we want to lash out and say, or email or do these certain things that may not be in the best interest of ourselves or our children in the long run, especially for divorce that involves, co-parenting in families. And you see that a lot where I'm going to do this, this, and this because I want my ex-spouse to suffer. And that's coming from an angry place. And it can sometimes end up hurting more people than intended. So understanding how our energy flows and kind of where it lands in the body and these stages can be really helpful. These are things that we, again, can process, just like you process verbally in therapy. You can process physically. You can process your anger and move through it through a super challenging, you talk about the arm balances and the really powerful practice. This is a way for us to burn through that negative energy or that anger, right? Mm-hmm. So that we can, again, come to a place of clarity where we're making decisions from a grounded, centered, equanimous place instead of knee-jerk reactions. That would be the goal.
Right.
Now we can all say, I've made decisions from a knee-jerk place, of course, but what we're trying to get to is that better version of ourselves, Bargaining. Bargaining kind of goes hand in hand with denial a little bit, right? It's almost like I sort of see what's going on, but I'm a little bit in denial, and maybe I can manipulate this situation to be what I want it to be.
And fear. Fear of the unknown, not wanting to move out of, even if it's not a healthy relationship, not wanting to move beyond that and take a chance.
Yeah.
And just being like, oh yeah, of course you can move back in, and like, we'll just, even if it's like a very like abusive relationship. Yeah. I see this happen a lot.
I'm sure you do. Yeah. And I've witnessed it as well. And there's the two greatest powers and energies that you'll read all the ancient and current philosophers and writers and great thinking minds talk about fear and love. Those are the two greatest energies that are oppositional to one another. And a lot of us will make decisions from a place of fear, and hopefully we can move towards a place of love. That jumps us up to the crown chakra, which is all associated with faith and hope and trust. And I skipped a few on the way there, but since you mentioned fear, when we're working with our foundation, our survival, we're working with our compassion, our love, our ability to communicate, our ability to become clearer in what's happening, and just all of these efforts that we make to be our best self, right? This is what we address in the yoga room and in the yoga philosophy, is how can we be our best selves? At the end of the day, at the end of that effort, there's always this mystical piece of, and now I give it over to the greater spirit or energy at hand, right? We can all agree that there is something greater at work here. My daughter used to ask me at night when I would put her to bed, she'd say, Mom, what carries the earth? She couldn't say earth yet. Earth. What carries the earth? And my son would ask, what makes your heart beat? And where do we go when we die? They would ask these like big questions of like, what's powering the universe, And so we can all agree that there's a greater power out there. There's something making that sun shine, And each of us have a different identification of what that energy is. So the crown chakra is what's dedicated to having faith and trust and hope that like there's a path here, and that doesn't mean just sit back and like it's all gonna get figured out. You've got to do some work. You've got to handle your business. And at the end of the day, when you've handled your business as best you can, you got to give it over to like, I trust that I'm going to be held. And that can be the kind of the belief system
Yeah.
to help with fear.
I love that. I mean, one of the things I learned, and I know that you and I have talked about this, I think you did too, is, and it's a concept that's hard to appreciate, but we learn it one way or another as we move through these things, which is we can't control anybody but ourselves. So when you're married to someone who, you realize that that relationship needs to end, and they're acting out in all kinds of ways and not showing up maybe the way you'd like them to for your children, or meeting their obligations, that's where you have to really hand it over, and trust in whatever that universal
And
energy
acceptance.
is. And that takes you to acceptance.
Yeah, so exactly. I love what you just said about that we cannot control anyone else except ourselves. The only thing we have power over is our own reactions, right? How we react to something and how we respond to something or someone. And also of a situation. Here's the situation that, is happening for whatever reason, whether it's been initiated by, your spouse or you or a combination, but this is the situation. It's a very powerful tool, and it's part of the 12-step program as well as acceptance. And so that acceptance of what is and making a choice at each moment this is probably one of the greatest teachings I've ever heard about the word karma. Here's the situation. I'm accepting it for what it is. I can make a choice to engage in it in a way that either entangles me or liberates me. I can choose to engage in this situation that I cannot control with a way that wraps me into difficulty or that frees me of it. And we have that choice every moment. And it's a challenging choice to make, but it makes it kind of simple. Do I want to get entangled or do I want to be liberated?
I love that.
Okay.
And yoga helped me really find that. I remember being in the final Shavasana pose, corpse pose, where you're lying flat on the ground after having been in some of your classes, and having that experience, that feeling of freedom. And I don't know, I suspect you probably experienced this too as you're going through the divorce process. It's a yucky, there's no way around it. Like you just got to get through it, and it's not fun. But the feeling of freedom when you get to the other side is unmatched. in getting. Do you agree?
Yeah, and it happens at different times for people, and it can be a long process or a short process. And I remember thinking and hoping, as my ex-husband and I, who I still love, I respect and love him. It just wasn't the right match for a longer term, and we have 2 beautiful children together. But I remember feeling like, God, I'm going to wake up one day and this wound's going to be gone and I'm going to be healed. And I realized, no, that's not the truth. That wound or that experience is always going to be with me. It's how I relate to it,
right?
That shifts and changes, and that's where the freedom is.
That's right. Absolutely.
It's like I don't want with it, right? I don't want to depict marriage as we talk about freedom tribe. Well, does the inverse of that mean that in marriage you're in shackles? No. If you're in a happy marriage, it's a wonderful, beautiful thing.
Of course.
But the process of divorce, which relates back to the construct of marriage, is sticky and messy and painful. And so the freedom of moving through those stages of grief and accepting it and moving beyond that and becoming enlightened, having a lighter heart from it, is what that sense of freedom is like. Oh, thank God.
Right.
I can now look at this situation, and that takes time.
It does.
And it also takes the willingness to heal, the willingness to do the work, to show up to your mat, to handle your business of putting your energy in all your chakras back in order.
Right.
And it's an inside job. And that's the thing about yoga. It's we see these postures and we think, oh, it's this physical thing, but it's the doorway into that inside job of self-study of what's going on in there? Where's my mind going all the time? What am I obsessing about? Oh, I have the power to change that.
It's a superpower.
Right?
It is a superpower.
The posture of, there's the posture of the body, but it's the posture of the mind that we're interested in. That's the practice.
That's the practice.
Juicy, right?
That is. So talk to me about Freedom Tribe. I know that you've done webinars. I've done some of them with you. What do you envision giving back and providing to women going through this process? Because I think it's so important, because I know you and I both felt, because we've talked about this, that we were alone. I felt like I was alone in a cave trying to figure out unsolvable problems on my own. And it was very isolating. And once I got through it and began doing this work, I feel like the work we do is such important work, so that women know that they're not alone, and they have other women who have survived this that they can look to, like you, as an example of, it gives them that hope of a new way to be, so they can overcome their fear and do what they need to do for themselves and their children. Yeah, I'm so honored that we have had the opportunity, because this is something that came out of one of our retreats together, right? Like, we can provide, I don't even want to call it a service, but an embrace for women going through this. And yes, it's a very isolating process. And one of the things that I realized being in it and then being outside of it is I occasionally would get, like, nowadays, even still, I'll get a call from a friend or someone I know. And it's usually not someone who's super close to me. It's like a distant friend. Hey, can I talk to you? I need to pick your brain. I'm like, I know what this is about. And I realized, I kind of drew the parallels of when we're in that process, there's grief, fear, shame, all these things involved, isolation. You don't know who to talk to. You can't really talk to your family members that are close to you, because they have a relationship with your spouse. So, and then all of a sudden you're taking care of them emotionally as well. Right. So you disengage a bit from your family. Even close friends that maybe have a relationship with you as a couple are emotionally involved, and they disengage a bit. And you don't want to pull them into the mix of the trauma and drama, because, you don't want to put that on your friends. So then all of a sudden, okay, the people that I would normally reach out to, my immediate family, my close friends, we're now in this disengaged place. And I don't know who to reach out to. And I'm probably at the lowest point I've ever experienced in my life. And you need support more than you've ever needed it. Yeah. Where do you turn? Exactly. And so it was like, wow. And then when I would start getting these calls from friends and realizing they're in the same place, I'm like, there is a need here. There is a need for support on an emotional level, on a physical level, on a practical level, with like, what do I do? How do I, it's sort of like breastfeeding, right? But very different. We don't see women breastfeeding in our culture. So they have to go to lactation specialists and breastfeeding classes. Sorry if that's a terrible analogy, but it's something that we don't see out in the open. And usually with divorce, it's like, we know it happens, but it's not something that we're like, so tell me how your divorce is going. Well, and we think it's never going to happen to us. And we think we never imagined that would happen to us. And that's part of the reason I'm doing this, is because divorce shouldn't be a dirty word. Right. It happens if you get married, the odds are, quite high that you might not stay married. Right. It's not that you won't get married again and that marriage isn't awesome when it works, but it needs to be part of the discussion, right, so that people are not feeling so alone, and either, you have fight, flight, or freeze. And I see so many women in this denial/frozen state. And it's a problem because lots of bad stuff can happen in that place. Your health can start to decline. If you don't move this energetic bad stuff out of your system, it lodges within your body. That's where disease comes from. That's where dis-ease comes from. So, we see our friends who've gone through this. Some of them have physical ailments. not to mention just like messed up emotionally and mentally, then it trickles down to their kids.
Yeah.
So there's that collateral damage. But also when they're frozen, if their spouse is not a particularly good character, all kinds of financial shenanigans can be happening. I mean, I've had represented many women where, you know, they were in marriage counseling, and the woman thought that their marriage was being worked on while the husband was just moving, you know, hundreds of thousands of dollars overseas, and actually, in one particular instance, had a wife in another country. I mean, that's a very extreme example.
Right.
But every single day in my practice, it's like an epidemic of women coming in who've been frozen and in denial, and their spouses have been moving money around and depriving them of what they need to take care of themselves for the rest of their lives. So, you know, I feel like there's just a real need to try to help them any way we can, and educate them and help them get out of that stuck place, that stuck denial place. That's what I'm seeing a lot of in
and
my
so
work.
I think you know, my vision of how I'd like to provide that. For years now, I've been guiding these international retreats, and I've seen the magic that happens when, you know, we pull together a group of people, and sometimes it's all women and sometimes it's mixed, but just health and wellness retreats in general, where we have a focused amount of time to practice together, to eat wonderful food, to have guided topic chats, and just live in a way that grounds and raises energy
and get us away from all the distractions.
And get you out of the distractions, and a chance to reflect on what's going on. And so, and I've watched this for years and seen these little families of friends that, I mean, you're a part of it, that have developed out of that, and the growth and literally the transformation that happens on many levels for folks that come through these experiences. And so I was, you know, my vision is to create that specifically for women going through divorce, so that we have a finite amount of time, even, you know, locally, a 3 or 4 day long weekend, and invite category experts like you or our friend Jackie Miller, Daisy Swan, so that there is a weekend of care and nurturing and nourishment for physical body, energetic body, mental body, good food, daily practice, laughter. Women, we thrive in community. Women thrive in connection with each other. And then also within that, education. Here's this guest speaker for the evening tonight, Anne Grant, who's going to talk to us about what typically happens during this phase of divorce or after divorce. Here's Jackie Miller, who's going to talk with us about divorce coaching. Here's a co-parenting specialist. Here's my dear sister-in-law, who is a marriage and family therapist, as a guest speaker. So that's my vision, is to create a really nurturing weekend where that it feels good, and then you come away, it's a chance for the participants to have a moment to collaborate, to connect, and to really come away with a clearer vision, hopefully, or at least definitely more information.
And to have the support system in place. Because when I've, as you said, when I've gone on these retreats with you, one of the yoga course is amazing, but I will tell you, my experience on our trips to Costa Rica in the jungle, I was just gobsmacked each time, because...
Did you just say gobsmacked?
I was gobsmacked, because there's no other word to describe the experience. It took me out of my comfort zone in such a way that, because you always put us in these situations where we're getting out of our comfort zone. And like, we have friends who were swinging upside down from this big banyan tree or whatever the tree is.
A lot of fallen tree.
Yeah. And so it creates a bonding experience. And these women that I've met on these retreats, I think of them as my sisters.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like they're family. And I think that if we can provide that through this Freedom Tribe that you're creating, that will do so much for these gals who feel isolated, alone, kind of going down the rabbit hole in the wrong direction, to lift them out of that and have the support, and then to be able to take steps to move forward and do whatever it is they need to do, whether it's work on their marriage or get out of their marriage, but not stay stuck.
Right. And that is a big piece of it. That I'm glad you brought that up, because it's not this is not intended to be like, yeah, divorce, go, get out of there. It's about, I mean, I've known plenty of women that have resolved their marriage and then moved to a better place, a much richer, more balanced place within their relationship with their partner. Some women that have decided to move on. But that is the piece, right? Is that clarity. And the 3 webinars that we offered last year, the first one was all about clarity and discernment.
Right.
Right. And it wasn't like pro-divorce, this is how you do it. Step 1, 2, 3. It was like, these are the things to consider.
That's right.
Yourself before you make this decision.
Well, and if it's not working, then go work on it.
Yeah, exactly.
But don't stay miserable.
It's an inside job.
That's right.
Right. So that is the vision. And, the bonding experiences through taking people to their edge a little bit.
Yes.
That's what hiking up a river or climbing up a tree or getting on a horse.
Passing out on the way up the mountain.
Which she survived.
Awakening with a wet sock on your forehead and Shelley's sweet face looking at me and realizing or thinking, I've gone to heaven. And there's an angel and it's Shelley Williams.
Yeah. When you're in that particular location, when you're several hundred miles away from the nearest hospital, you gotta do it.
I love this. I can't wait. So now we're going to go into our lightning round.
Oh, lightning round.
So the lightning round is a series of questions.
Oh boy.
That I ask everyone.
Okay.
So Shelley, if there's anything you could do differently in your divorce, what would that be?
Oh, so many things. So many things. I wish I had this course before I went through that we've been working on this, but I didn't. So what would I do differently? I would have removed all distractions. Yeah, I would have removed all distractions. I thought I needed certain things, certain situations in my life to be okay, and really I didn't. All I needed was me.
Wow.
And not to say that I didn't need the support of community, but as far as like maybe unhealthy distractions that were not serving me, that I knew it in my gut. But I was in denial about that.
Right.
So
well, it's a really hard thing to go through.
Yeah.
So a lot of women will drink more, have multiple boyfriends, or I mean, they'll go on. I've seen women getting divorced in situations where they need to be sort of like careful about money, and all of a sudden they're just spending money like, the packages just keep showing up on the, we can be our own worst enemies. So I think that's, anyway, I didn't.
No, you didn't. But yeah, just removing distractions, and having, if I could go back, having more support, having a second set of eyes with the legal, practical stuff, just resourcing myself more with a team. Having I was seeing my therapist, but meeting with my therapist a little bit more. Just leaning on the resources that had I known were there for me, to pull that in more. So the therapist, the lawyer, maybe even another lawyer to look at it, just to be like, let me put a second set of eyes on that.
Because you went through mediation.
I would not mediate.
You were very anxious to be done.
I was rushing, so I did not take. I don't think we took enough time, and I speak for my ex and I, because I know we both walked out of the mediation process feeling pretty dissatisfied, and just not having that empowerment for having 2 separate representations, I think would have empowered each of us more and maybe helped us in a fuller way communicate what we couldn't communicate in the same room together with a mediator.
Right.
You know what I mean?
I do. Well, the mediator isn't your lawyer.
Right.
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
And a lot of women that go through mediation, and like you, they're super evolved. They're all about being loving and kind. They just want to be done. And then years later realize, oh gosh, I was entitled to this, that, and the other. And it would have been good to have known that. So, yeah.
Yeah. So don't be in a rush. Take your time if you can, and make sure that, you're you're educated on what's going on. So that's what I would have done differently. Yeah.
And what are, you have 2 lovely children.
Yes, I do.
Is there anything you would do differently through the divorce process with respect to your children and co-parenting than you did, or are you satisfied with how that was handled?
We really made them our priority, and I'm proud of us for that. We really made their well-being the pinnacle of everything else. And so I feel that just keeping that, like, you know, as the most important focus and intention for these wonderful little beings who are innocent bystanders, they didn't choose it, is key. And so making sure that we did not throw any disparaging comments about one another in front of them, making sure that they felt loved and safe and knew what was going on and knew whose house that they were going to sleep at. And if they needed more time with dad, okay, then we'll go over there, or more time with me, and just really respecting their process too, because, you know, we kind of tend to, oh, the kids are fine. Like, no, this is the most, for many kids, traumatic thing that they'll go through too, you know? Right. And so really, I feel like we did a good job on keeping them as our main focus and taking care of them. Communication is key with that. And that's something I've already learned a lot post-divorce from just hearing our friend Jackie Miller talk about techniques for communication with co-parenting, and how important it is to, when you have that moment, to either entangle or liberate with certain communications that are happening with your ex and that involve the kids, and like, okay, let's take the high road here.
That's what's in my head. Like, it's always about take the high road, and it's the hardest thing to do. You will never be more challenged in that regard than when you're going through a divorce when it comes to the kids, because they often, even with the most evolved people, that's where the power struggle is. Like, I see this all the time. Mom wants them to eat, you know, lots of vegetables. Dad takes them to In-N-Out Burger. And like, people will want to go to, I don't go to court over this, but they'll want to go to court over this. And so, you know, you just have to really, that's where this notion that we talked about of, I can't control anyone but myself. The judge is not going to order him to feed the kids broccoli. That's not happening. That is not happening anywhere on planet Earth. Let it go.
Yeah, because the judge is going to leave and go to In-N-Out right
after. Yeah, the judge will be like, I don't have time for this. I have to go to In-N-Out.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
I agree with you there. Choose your battles.
Choose your battles. You know? Choose your battles.
And the kids, I also felt too that, you know, the children learn about relationships from what they see, whether you're, you know, at home in a nuclear family, married, or divorced and co-parenting. And that's one of the things that my ex and I talk about a lot. It's like, they're learning from us in how we engage with one another, and that's going to affect their relationships. So let's continue to set a good example for them, even in this divorced co-parenting model that we're in now, because that's what they're learning from.
I love that. You know? I love your approach.
So I don't want to ever be in that situation where, like, I'm dropping you off at the curb because I can't stay on the side of them, or you know, like, that's just not the dynamic that I think is healthy for them. It creates tension, and it creates tension for them as well.
And for you too. It's not good for anybody.
Yeah.
No one wins. Then the last question I have for you is, what advice would you give to women contemplating or going through divorce? What one thing would you leave them with?
Take care of yourself. Make sure we tend to put ourselves last as mothers, and as men do it too, right? Like, focus on all the other things and make sure that you take care of the root chakra, right? Physical body, home, health. This is our home that we live in. We have the place we go and our address where our mail goes to, but really this is our physical abode and where we come home to.
We only get one spaceship. We got to take care of our spacesuit. This is
right. So take care of yourself. Take that time to fill your cup every day with your movement practice, with something that brings you joy, even if it's for 5 minutes, breathing, sipping your tea or coffee, and like listening to the birds outside your kitchen window. Like, fill your cup, because that's what's going to take you through, make you a better, with whatever, from personal to practical to professional, a better mother, a better professional, a better ex-spouse, whatever it is, to handle this situation. So take care of yourself. The power of 3, and it can be as simple as 3 deep breaths, right? Taking 3 deep breaths to take a moment, taking 3 days before making a big decision. The power of 3, and it's a powerful number in nature, and it resonates with kind of what we do for ourselves, for our wellness, right? And so, as the simplest practice that every single person who might tune in and watch this, and for you and I and everyone in this room, is 3 deep breaths, which takes between typically 10 to 15 seconds.
Should we do that right now?
Yeah, let's do it.
Okay.
That's 1. That's 2. That's 3. And look at that smile.
I love you.
You are so welcome. I absolutely adore you. Thank you for being here. And thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for being on our show.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate it. And I'm so excited to see what happens next.
Me too. Thank you so much for having me.